intro beat there is brought to you by Podbeat App, which I'll talk about here in just a minute. But before I do, welcome to the Young Dad Podcast. I'm your host, Jay. Thank you so much for listening. Whether you're changing diapers right now, outside grilling, mowing the lawn, or you're just laying down because it's time to chill out and the kids are in bed and you finally get to listen to your favorite podcast, welcome in. I'm so excited for today's podcast. I have with me Mick and Dave. How are you gentlemen tonight?
Doing great. Thank you for having us.
Excited to see you.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you guys. Before we get too far into it, like I just said, that intro beat was brought to us by the Podbeat app. Podbeat app, probably one of the coolest apps out there, one of the most unique, two of the coolest people that run it. They're just absolutely phenomenal. What Podbeat is it takes your favorite podcast and you play your podcast on your phone. Any phone you have, whatever phone you listen to, anywhere you podcast, Apple, Spotify, wherever. You open it up. You pull open the Podbeat app. It looks a little bit like this. You hit that Podbeat app, and then you pick from your beat that you want. There's pop, hip-hop, rock, groove, EDM. That was the EDM, one of the EDM beats you heard there. And so many more, and more that are coming soon through their app. You open it up, you play it on top of your podcast, and it gives you that beat you need to keep up your workout routine. Whether you want to hit 140 beats per minute, you can do that. If you need it loud and blasting to phase out everything, you can do that too. If you need a little bit quieter to kind of mellow out, you can do that too. But whatever your need is, Podbeat has you covered. You can use Podbeat for free on any platform that you find your favorite apps on. And if you love it that much, you can even pay just a teeny bit, $3 to get unlimited access to their full catalog of beats. So without further adu, Nick, Dave, you guys are the hosts of the Country Music Dads podcast. And it's a pretty cool concept myself being a country music fan. You guys look at parenting through the lens of country music. How does a song or an artist help you get through the day? Or how does you use a song or an artist to help you with your parenting style or daily routine? Just two of the many questions and many examples of country music dads. So please tell us a little bit more about the podcast, where it came from, the concept, about you guys, and, the story, really.
Dave, I'm going to let you go first because you're younger and prettier.
Aww, that's so sweet.
Well, it's very subjective, but also very sweet, Mick. So I appreciate it. I'm happy to go first. Yeah, so Country Music Dads, we just started this year. We just launched this year. Mick and I have been friends for a few years. We met at a convention for stay-at-home dads. It's called Home Dad Con.
I love Home Dad Con.
Have you been?
I haven't been, but I know Brock. He's been on the He was on the podcast a long time ago.
Awesome.
So very familiar with Home Dad Con. But anyways.
Yeah, a seasoned podcaster.
Yeah.
Brock Alouche.
He's incredible. He's such a cool guy.
Of Home Dad Chat.
Yes.
Yeah. The podcast of the National At-Home Dad Network. So yeah. So Mick and I are both stay-at-home dads. We met at the convention, kind of connected on our new profession as at-home dads, our new occupation. And obviously that convention is all about it's like what am I trying to say? It's like
the sense of community that we all have. There's a big problem within the stay-at-home dad world where guys just kind of feel they're out there by themselves, and Home Dad Con really just does a great job of bringing people together so that they can get the sense of community that they know that they're not doing it alone.
Yeah, so the content of the convention, in addition to the community building aspect, you also get kind of on the job training almost, or
continuing education.
That's the word I was looking for.
Yeah,
continuing
there you go.
Education for parenting, whether it's how to paint nails, or how to braid hair, or just how to conceptualize what it means to have a new role, to be out of the workforce and working in a different way for your family. So Mick and I both connected on that level, as we do with all the other attendees there. Mick and I also happen to connect on our shared love of country music. So that kind of came up after the convention, when we were following each other on social media, I did a little bit of freelance writing for a country music website called Whiskey Riff, and Mick was reading some of my articles, and so we kind of share over text or Instagram DM, just thoughts about music. And Mick had another podcast that he was a part of for, I don't know, Mick, how many years? 3 years?
3 years, yeah. Dad House ran for 3 years, but that kind of just we got to a different place in our life, and the Dad House podcast went away, and I was kind of feeling that creative void, lacking, and Dave and I happened to be on a meeting for the National At Home Dad Group. They do a book club, a virtual book club. And one of the guys that was on there, another mutual friend of ours, asked me, say, "Hey, Mick, what's up with the podcast?" And I explained how it kind of went by the wayside. And lo and behold, about a week later, I get this phone call from Dave, and he's like, "Yeah, I could tell by, hearing you talk that you were kind of maybe, sad that the podcast, you're not doing anymore or whatever. Have you thought about maybe doing something else?" And I said, "Well, yes, I have. And actually, you're on my list to give a call because I've got an idea I want to run by you." And he's like, "Well, okay, I'm calling." They were talking now because I had an idea I want to run by you. So we ran both of our ideas by each other, and he said, "Okay, I like yours better. Let's start talking serious."
I like it.
So we ended up, we feel like we have a lot of advice to offer about parenting because that's our full-time job. And I felt like Mick, who has been doing that job and being a parent for 18 years now, he has a lot to offer, and I wanted to make sure his voice was still getting out there. His podcast ended, and I thought it was a shame. So here's another reason to get Mick's voice out there, and some of his expertise out to people that I think could benefit from it. And then we wanted to share our love of country music and kind of take a different angle on parenting, and also a different angle on the music. We just interpret the songs and the the message that the artists are putting together a little bit differently now that we have kids. And so we just thought that would be an interesting way to look at it, and something else that we share a passion for. And really, I think that there's kind of a connection between the two. Country music, that's always what drew me to it, is the storytelling and the very relatable kinds of issues and themes that come up. And it was the same type of feeling that I would get talking to other parents once I became a dad, when I'd hear stories that I could relate to, especially the sad ones, or the kind of tough stories or the failures the dads went through that I could relate with. It made me feel a lot better about my own parenting journey. And so I think that music can kind of do the same thing. Not just country music, any type of music can kind of speak to you wherever you are. So that's what we're trying to do with the podcast.
Yeah, because I mean, when you think about country music is known for its storytelling. And when you look at parenting, parenting is all about storytelling too. It's in so many different ways. Maybe it's the story that you're telling your spouse, partner, whatever your situation, about what you did in the particular day with the kids. Maybe it's the story you're telling your, the grandparents or the aunts and the uncles, again, whatever phase in life you're in. Maybe it's the story that your child is telling you about what happened in school, what happened on the playground, what happened, again, wherever they are in the current, dynamic of the day. And then sometimes it's just the stories that you're telling to your kids. Maybe it's a story about when you were a kid, or maybe you're using a story to get a specific parenting message across. But the but storytelling is that's what parenting is. It's storytelling in one way, shape, or form, pure and simple. And what better way to put an entertainment aspect to storytelling than to involve music. And it just so happens that Dave and I both like country music.
Hey, it's a match made in heaven. Hey, I love a few things you
Sure.
guys both said there. There's some things there that I want to hit on. The first is country music's so good. Like it's so good. Can we just agree on that? Like it's literally, I think, made for dads. More so than any other music, essentially. Rock is probably up there too, dad rock, of course. But country music,
Yeah.
there's just something about it. The stories that are told within um, country music are incredible. They're thought provoking. They're emotion provoking. They're just every aspect mentally and emotionally. They're provoking. They tell a story in each and every song. A lot of them about trucks, yeah. A lot of them about women and things like that. But maybe some about beer. But there's also some amazing ones about being a dad. Like literally, it has dad in the title. There's so many. There's dozens of them, and they're incredible. I literally have a playlist ready for my daughter's weddings that are going to be in 20 years from now. Like I got them loaded up. I got them ready. I'm ready for this. It's happening. I listen to them a lot now so that I don't cry as much later, kind of thing. Get it all out now. Um, but that's
Yeah, I don't know what it is about the music like that. I feel like as I got older, I started off I was into punk rock
yeah,
growing up, and I was more of a rock
yep,
person. But I felt like each year as I got older, I just craved more of the kind of the simple things. As life got busier, there was more responsibilities, and I felt that's what drew me to country music. And then yeah, once I had kids, game over. You're totally right. There's so many songs about fatherhood and
hmm
family, and you can just pick out. You can just there's just so much that you can take from a lot of different songs.
absolutely.
For me, I think it's always been the feeling that country artists have a unique ability that just many other musicians do not have of making you feel as if they are talking to you directly. I don't know what it is. I don't know how they do it, but just genre wide, it's just the feeling that I get anyway.
No, absolutely, 100% agree. And there is something there that changes when you become a dad, right? Music hits different. Movies, especially anything Disney Pixar makes, hits a little bit different. Everything just hits a little bit different. And there's psychology behind it, especially if you have girls. There's actually biologically things that happen to you when you become a girl dad. Your testosterone literally drops. You become less of like a macho man and you become more soft. Like biologically, your testosterone levels drop, and you are biologically softened when you have a daughter and when you hold her for the first time. There's things that biologically and chemically happen within our brain that I'm not enough well versed in, even though I work in mental health. I'm not well versed in them enough to talk to them, to speak to them. But I do know these things. They're there. Uh, and it just hits different when you become a dad. And I don't it's amazing, and country just has that aspect to it to where it just takes you away. You get lost into it. And like you said, country artists just have this way of storytelling, of talking through their music. I think Jelly Roll is an excellent example of that. Like current one of the current artists, that's just an excellent example of that. Strong and powerful in conveying that story. A lot of music doesn't really convey that story, especially like hip hop and rap and mainstream rock and things like that. Like, I mean, some music is just beats, lo-fi and EDM and dubstep. Like, it's just beats. That doesn't really tell a story. Um, but country music is just different in that aspect to how it breaks you down a little bit. It breaks you down. It makes you feel something, whether it's good or
It's interesting.
oh, good.
Yeah, Jay, it's interesting. I just want to see, you just said something that I think is really paramount when you're talking about country artists. And I'm going to use Jelly Roll, your example, as the example. But you talked about, you used the phrase breaks you down. And I think that's one thing that country artists do is they are honest about themselves, their shortcomings, their past trials, tribulations. Let's take Jelly Roll, for example. A lot of his story, he's putting out there. He's showing his vulnerability.
Everything.
He's showing how he is screwed up.
Everything
And,
is out
you
there.
know, and if you hear him ever get up on stage and talk, he just talks about how just so grateful he is for the second chance, third chance, whatever the
He's
case,
such a powerful thinker.
that goes on with him. And, kind of going back to along the lines of the country artists make you feel as if they're talking, directly to you. But I think more than any other musical genre, they talk about themselves and they open up and they show their human side.
Yeah. No, 100%. And I think that's probably the number one thing that makes it so relatable is that it's human, and that's what we're all kind of looking for in this dad life, right? We're looking for human connection. We're looking for the human aspect in all that we do, right? Because we're not essentially, we are raising little humans. We're raising humans to be the next generation, to be tomorrow's leaders, to be everything in the world that will need to be everything in the world, to be the next innovators. And most importantly, we're raising them to be good humans, kind, honest, caring, loving, thoughtful, empathetic, sympathetic, all the words, all the traits that we strive for as ourselves to be as dads. And we fall short, and that's natural. Um, but for you guys especially, like, I'm not a stay-at-home dad. I hope one day that this podcast takes off and it becomes something, and I get to just stay home with the kids and chill and podcast and say peace out to my wife when she goes to work, and um, just have fun having conversations with people every day, like this. But that's the dream, right? I'll have to reach 1 million dads first, but once I do, then hey, it gloves off. We're fighting. But for you guys, being stay-at-home dads, what is that challenge like? Because it's different being a stay-at-home dad. And so, what are those challenges that you guys face? What are some of those just amazing things, like even through country music, that help you guys on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, well, I know when I was still in the workforce, and I wasn't until my oldest son turned 2, is about the pandemic year when I started staying home with them. So I was doing my wife and I were doing the double income working parent thing, and just kind of in the scramble that I hear about so much from my friends who are working parents. Before that, whenever me and my buddies would get together, we'd always kind of joke about, hey, someday, hopefully, our wives will be killing it and we'll be stay-at-home dads, and we can't wait for that day. And we would like joke about it, we'd laugh about it, like, oh yeah, I can't wait for that day to happen, because our wives were all really, they're serious about their careers, really successful. I think what was toughest for me when it first became a reality for me is that it is a grind that I don't think you really realize. I think like guys especially don't realize, because kind of as a default, men don't take as much on in the household with the cooking and the cleaning and the emotional labor of just worrying about where the kids are going. When are the doctor's appointments? Is the pantry stocked with all the essentials? All those little things that I think men just aren't typically brought up thinking about, as maybe from the example that their fathers set. Their fathers were, or our fathers were, mostly the breadwinners, and I came from kind of a traditional family background. My mom was the stay-at-home mom. My dad was the working dad, and that was the balance that I kind of understood. So when, for my family, we kind of flipped the script and I was the one staying at home, suddenly that was a little bit overwhelming, actually. Just all the things that I had to worry about. And I think my wife and I had a pretty good balance before I stayed home. But even so, it's just there's just always something that you could be doing for the household or something that you might forget. So I really felt like the emotional labor, and I think it's sometimes called invisible labor, took its toll on me at first when I like didn't really know what to call it. I didn't have anybody else to relate to that kind of knew what I was experiencing, and so it was a little bit frightening and overwhelming. And at the same time, I was having my own doubts, like, is this actually what I'm supposed to be doing? Should I be working? A little bit of guilt that maybe, am I lazy? Did I get out of the workforce too soon? Or am I making a big mistake for my career to step back? So just the doubts and the weight of the emotional labor, I think, was at first what of took a lot out of me at the beginning.
Yeah, the stuff that Dave, touched upon is pretty common within, our community. Um, I went into this eyes wide open 18 years ago. I mean, it just because it's what made sense for our family. My wife was involved kind of in a family business. I used to work for a robotics company and was on the road for 150 days a
Oof.
year, doing training and installation stuff. 150 days a year in a hotel is hard enough on a marriage, much less a family. So, my wife and I were like, we want a stable home life, and the way to do it was to have a parent stay home. And so she's like, so stay home, and I'm like, why you? Why does it have to be you? And she looks at me and she's like, well, I guess it doesn't, as long as it's somebody. And that's the key. And that's what a lot of guys, I think, struggle with at the beginning, is the aspect of, I'm doing something that's different. And you either have to either just own it, or that will just nag at you. And then you start getting into some of the stuff Dave talked about. Maybe you'll constantly be challenging your thought process and your abilities, start getting into imposter syndrome type stuff, just the whole self-doubt thing, of, I'm not doing it the way, my mom did it maybe, or my wife does it when I get home. But, um, for me, that was just the biggest thing, is just at the beginning saying, I can do this. I can own it. And then you roll with it, and then you do it your way. You know, it might be different, probably going to be different, but does it what works for you and your family? If the answer is yes, then you go, man. You go.
Absolutely. And I,
Yeah,
oh, go ahead.
I think it took me it took me, I think, a year to fully own it, and actually going to the home dad convention and meeting people like Mick that kind of would encourage me to own it, and like, no, this is who you are. You're a stay at home dad. I think for that first year, I was just like, nah, I'm on a break. I'm taking some time off from work. That was my answer from when people would ask what I was up to. And so after that first year, when I finally felt like, oh, I have some confidence in this new path, um, it was easier for me to just say it, and really it made it easier to do a good job. I thought it was a
Yeah.
lot better. I was a lot better mentally for it.
Yeah, and I was lucky as well. I didn't do it all. I didn't do it all on my own. I've, was lucky enough to find a dad's group. So I live in Kansas City, and there used to be a group called KC Dads. They've kind of run their course. They've kind of consolidated into the National Cities Dads group now. But 18 plus years ago, I found some peers. I found some other mentors, and uh, that made a huge difference.
Yeah. Those things all make a really big difference, and there's some relation here between myself. Like I was a single dad for 3 years, you know, part time, I had my kid 50-50 with my ex wife. And, it's taking on that invisible part of it because they're with me half the time and just me. Like there's no one else here with me. And kind of having to figure it out on my own. Like before that, I was very, well equipped. Like I'm very lucky I went through Boy Scouts and I became an Eagle Scout and I earned so many different merit badges and my dad pushed me and I was pushed by my grandmother and stuff growing up to learn how to do laundry, to cook, to clean, to take care of myself, to take care of a home, to do chores, to mow a lawn, to fix things, and to do basic just household stuff so that I was a functional, just human being, honestly. And then going to college and living with roommates and living on my own really helped all that. So I could be functional within a marriage and within a relationship and even on my own and be self sufficient. Uh, but, there's no playbook for when you become either a stay-at-home dad or even a single parent, a single dad, and you're doing some of that invisible work that's just not there. You're not used to doing. You don't realize you're not doing it until you have to do it. Until you have to console a child who's really sad for something, and you're like, "Whoa, this is something that's out of my realm," because maybe you as an individual, you weren't that wasn't done to you by your father figure in your life. Maybe there was no father figure, right? Maybe you didn't have that as an example before you. And so it can be really difficult. And there is a huge adjustment period to all these things. It took me probably at least a year and a half to get just used to life and how life was and routines and everything. And it was a struggle. It's a lot easier now. Bless my wife, she's incredible. Um, and things are a lot more, I guess, quote unquote, normal. Uh, and things are a lot more stable, and it's a lot just overall better. But having that support system, like you mentioned, is a crucial element here. Knowing that you're not alone, knowing that there's other dads out there who maybe stay at home dads, or for me, it was finding Craig, host of the Single Dad Reboot, who had gone through a divorce and was doing a podcast that, didn't have a lot of episodes, but, it was put in front of me. There wasn't a coincidence. I ran across his podcast. I typed in on Spotify, podcast for divorced dads, popped up, and it just started flowing from there. And then the rest is history. Craig's one of my really good friends now. He's a big inspiration for why I podcast, because he's like, you have a story to tell. Your story can help other people. And I think it was him who shared a quote with me, like, man, I don't remember who it's by, but it's your story for what you went through will be the blueprint for someone else for what they're going through. And it's just a powerful example. And that's even related to our day to day lives. Like we are laying the blueprint for our kids, essentially. Like we are mapping out how they're going to react, how they're going to act, how they're going to survive. Like we're giving them the blueprint, and it's an incredibly hard job being home all the time, especially in 2024. Like there's still that expectation of dads to kind of be out in the workforce versus it's just commonplace for both parents to be in the workforce now, not even one to stay at home. But if one is staying home, like it's still the traditional aspect of, well, mom's going to stay home because dad has more earning potential. Even though that's not true across all career fields anymore. It's, kind of just what everyone thinks and what everyone does. So for you guys, outside of, the daily grind of what it is, what has been the hardest thing for you guys becoming stay-at-home dads? The place where you've really had to adjust and to grow and to learn the most?
This is where I usually defer to Dave because honestly, I've been doing this for 18 years, Jay, and there's a lot of stuff that I just don't remember
Fair.
because
You're
I've
not that
either
old, Mick. Come on, your memory is not going yet.
it's not that it's a memory thing. It's the I've gotten through it thing. It either processed or it took care of itself, or I learned to deal with it, and it's become a non-issue, so to speak,
I think that's powerful in it.
if that makes
I think
sense.
that's powerful in itself. It's That's a powerful statement right there, because it's, I don't even know how to explain it, but it's like right here and it wants to come out, but it can't formulate right now. But
I feel like it's like the power of experience, just having experience. Like I know when I had my first kid, whenever we would go to the pediatrician with my first kid, he had all this like checklist, all these things he wanted us to do. He was reminding us of things to look out for, and it was just like an education every single time we went in. When my second kid was born, I was kind of expecting the same thing and like thinking, this will be nice. I'll get a reminder of all these things. And he's this old school doctor. He was like, well, the first one was fine. So, all right, call me if you have any problems. And the checklist was gone because he trusted us suddenly. And I was like, should you trust me? I have only had one kid. And you don't actually know how he's turned out. He's still alive. That's it.
and that
But I think it is pretty powerful though, because I look at parents that are new parents now. I've got 3 kids now, and I'm it gives me a lot of pride. I'm very confident in my ability to take care of a baby up until a 6-year-old, because that's where mine are at. I have no idea what to do with beyond that though. But Mick now he's been through the gauntlet, 18 years.
yeah,
So you've seen it all to some degree.
That's one of the things about our show that I think works well, is that we've got both ends. Obviously, not both ends. We have like the first end of the parenting spectrum, and then we have what you could make an argument for could be like the later end, but you know, but but is definitely in the middle range, because you never stop being a parent. You never stop helping your kids and giving advice and everything. So I don't want to say we have the back end of the parenting spectrum covered, because we don't, because I'm still in the middle of it. I'm still in the weeds, with with 2 teenagers and a tween. Um, but that's one of the things that about Dave and my relationship on the show is we are constantly looking at things from a multitude of angles.
makes sense. It makes sense. And I think a good way to
Yeah.
put kind of where the difference is here is, I heard a quote once, and I feel it's super true. Just for where I'm at, we spend approximately 70% of the time we're going to spend with our kids between the ages of 0 and 13. And then the next 15% that we spend with our kids is 13 to 18. So that's 90% by the time they're 19. And then the rest of the 10% comes throughout the rest of their life. Well, and that's going to be different for everyone, of course, different kids. But that's something that really put it in perspective for me. Like, whoa. And I only see my kids half the time. So I have to like half all those numbers. And it's like, whoa. Like, I really don't have yes, I have time. Like, time is time. And but it shows, like, yes, like Dave's in the first 70, right? Mick, you could be considered the last 30, right? And so there's that, if you're putting it into that like math terms and percentages and things like that, all things considered, we hope it's longer, right? We hope that those are shorter and longer later, and so on and so forth. But if we just stick to that quote, then it puts it in that. And that's a cool aspect. Like, I'm in the, um, my daughter just turned 7 this week, or turned 7 this week. My apologies there. And so, like, I have a toddler who's going on 4 this year, and then a 7-year-old. And I feel like if I was to have a baby, I would be so lost, because now I'm just used to raising a toddler and an elementary school kid who's 7 going on 17. Like, once that three-nager stage hit, like the three-nager, and from then on, it's just 3 going on 13, 4 going on 14, 5 going on 15, 6 going on 16, I feel. Um, and it's so fun. Luckily, my little one, she still likes to be baby. She's my baby at my house. She's not the baby at her mom's house. There's 2 other children that her mom's had since her. And so she gets to be baby with me, and she's like my baby still. And so she still gets some of that like baby aspect, and she gets a little bit more. But that second child, I think, Dave, what you said, how the doctor's like very engaged the first one, but then when they see you come back with the second one, they're a little bit more like, okay, you got this, you're fine. And I think that's why it's so true. Because when there's an older child who's playing sports, this is like one of my favorite videos I see all the time. And the older child's playing sports. They're on the baseball field or whatever. Behind every older sibling who's playing sports, there's a younger sibling, a toddler, absolutely running wild in the stands. Uh, and that is true for my kids because my 3 year old, she is wild when her sister's on the field and just doing the absolute most. And it's super fun. It's a good time, but um, yeah, just kind of think about that. But I think it's true. You experience it, you learn how to cope with it essentially, and you learn how to get through it. You learn how to adjust and to adapt because that's what we do as men, right? We learn how to adapt. We say, "All right, I'm gonna figure it out. I got this. I'm gonna do it. If it's hard, I'm still gonna do it. I'm gonna figure it out." Because that's what we do as men, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And when you're blessed enough to be one of the at-home parents, you have to look at it as a job. You have to take it seriously. You have to say, I need to perform this job to the best of my abilities. It's no different than any other job. You just don't get paid monetarily, but you got to perform. You have to put yourself in a position to perform.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think one great thing about the like Mick said it very accurately. I think it's a blessing to be an at home parent. And when you're talking about the statistics on how much time we spend with our kids and how front loaded it is, I think I've seen some versions of that on Instagram or something, and they usually just kind of make me sad because
Right.
you like realize how short the time is, and I have to make the most of every moment. I feel very blessed that I have that option to spend a lot of time with them. I'm just by default because I'm here. I'm at home with them. I'm taking them to all their sports and school and everything. Um, I won't have many regrets. Maybe as many regrets as I would have when I was in the workforce. But when I tell my wife too, because she kind of feels guilty when she has to stay late at the office or that she's not spending enough time with the boys. Really, I think there's still, like Mick was saying, it is a job at home. With like I have lots of things that I need to get done, and I have the flexibility where I can choose because my kids are right there. I can choose to put off the work, the folding the laundry, or doing the dishes, or doing that one chore to spend time with them. But I think there's that I still always have that tension where I'm like, I really got to get this done though, and you're gonna have to wait. And what I encourage my wife is that when she comes back from work, she is present and she's locked in with the boys and spends like really good quality time with them. And if I'm not careful, I don't even get that because it's easy to get wrapped up in all the things to do around the house and the things to plan. So I think at least there's like it's not necessarily like the volume of time. Like you can always the quality of the time that you have with
Absolutely.
them, I think makes a big difference.
And this is why looking at parenting through the lens of country music can be so beneficial at times. For example, one of our earlier episodes, we discussed a song by Darius Rucker called It Won't Be Like This for Long.
Oh,
And we talked about, yeah, I can see the look on your
oh,
face. You know where I'm going with this, back to those percentages. But we talked about how when you're in the middle of that 70% amount of time, you don't necessarily want to hear about it and how you don't want the little old lady in the shopping cart coming up to you and saying, "Oh, you're gonna miss this. It's not gonna be like this forever, and just enjoy these days because you're in the middle of the weeds." You know, you hate having to watch Bluey for the 15th time, a day, or you. whatever the particular the thing is, you're kind of feeling stuck. But then you hear a song comes on the radio, and you're like, that tells a little bit of a story, and then it just kind of gives you a little reset, um, to where you're like, okay, you know what? I understand. I was able to relate to the point that this artist was making, and from the story that they were telling, and I'm going to relate that to my story. And yeah, you're right. It's not going to be like this for long, and I just maybe having a little bit of a difficult time right now, but I'm still doing my job, and I'm doing it to the best I can, and I can move on.
Absolutely. And just to go along with that, it very much also reminds me of the song "You're Gonna Miss This" by Trace Atkins. Um, just how fast that time absolutely flies. It goes from I would assume like late elementary, like middle school, to high school, to being a bride, to owning a home, to having a plumber there.
Yep.
And the plumber just puts it back in perspective. Like, it hits him too in that moment. Like, I got two babies of my own. One's 36, one's 23. It's hard to believe. And it puts it back in that perspective. One thing I've talked about so many times here on the podcast is like, it's okay. Like, those toys on the ground, it's okay. Like, one day those toys are going to be gone, and you're not going to have those toys on the floor anymore. So I'm getting emotional. Um, and you're not gonna
No, I know
you're not
exactly where you're coming from, because
and
I'm living that. I'm living that right now with my 10-year-old. That's why I do not make her pick the toy room up. It looks like DEFCON 3 in there, with Barbie dolls everywhere. But very seldom do I make her pick it up, because I know that there's a day when those toys are going to get picked up, and they're never going to go back on the floor.
yeah.
You know.
And yeah.
So we're just going to celebrate that chaos a little bit. But it's funny, Jay, that you mentioned the Trace Adkins song, because when we were planning that particular episode, we were debating, okay, which one do we do first? Do we do the Trace Adkins song, or do we do the Darius Rucker song? And we just decided to do the Darius Rucker song, because that kind of focuses on more of a early stage in life.
Mhm.
And we thought that the Trace Adkins song might be, good when we want to, tackle it from the teenager perspective.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, so much so that I kept on quoting the Trace Adkins song during our episode. I had to keep on editing myself out. It's like that was the wrong song. Okay.
Yeah. And they're so similar too. Like, there's like the Darius Rucker song is essentially kind of like the precursor to the Trace Atkins song almost. Like, you could take more than half this song almost, and all the way up to like the "and raise her veil" like part. You could take all the way up to there, which is more than, or "someday he'll walk her down the aisle." Like, essentially, this is like a whole precursor song. If you listen to these back to back, it could be like the whole life, essentially, from beginning to when she's an adult and has her own kids, essentially, right? And it's really cool. It's really cool how we can relate music to one another, to one song to another, and create an even bigger story from two songs to make a whole lifespan, uh, and relate to it, And uh, another song that's just been stuck in my head lately too, when it comes to country music and even just setting an example for our kids, is you guys will probably know this if I just say this one line. And then my 4-year-old's in a 4-letter word. It started with S, and I was
Watching you,
concerned.
watching you.
Watching
Okay.
you,
Yep.
Rodney
Yes.
Atkins.
Yep.
Right?
And
Yep.
again, it just talks about how important dads are. And I have a point I'm making with this, I promise. And that point is that, and this is something that I want to get into with you guys a little bit, get into the weeds here, but dad set such a powerful example for their kids. We set a bar, right? Like, we lay that foundation, we're writing their blueprint for them. and essentially don't be discouraged and don't get discredited because you're helping and then you're told that you're not helping the right way. It kind of goes back to what you said earlier, Mick, like find your way and do the way that works for you and follow it. But so often, especially on social media, and it's so disgusting how it's just made a joke essentially to where a woman will portray her husband and the father of her children as just incompetent, that he doesn't know what he's doing, that he's not doing it the right way. Like so many videos, like, yes, he cleaned up, but he didn't clean it my way. So it's still not clean. Excuse me, it's clean. Like it's very much clean. He just did a little bit differently than you. That's fine. We're all different people. You can't expect, and vice versa. So I guess what I want to ask you with this part, kind of being not kind of, but being in this scenario to where you guys are not scenario. So I'm saying all the wrong words, like this is hypothetical, but it's not. But being in the situation you guys are, being stay-at-home parent with your kids, how does this all balance with life and routine and example and everything that goes on in the day-to-day parenting?
You want to go first, Dave, or you want me to?
I was waiting for the Mick rant about the dads as the incompetent parent.
Light it up, Mick. I asked like I went like a lot of different directions there, and I kind of just went on like 5 tangents. So.
But there's it's not a simple thing. There's no one size fits all answer to your question. And it's even hard for me to answer for the very simple reason that I am lucky. I have a wife who, as I mentioned, I went into this eyes wide open 18 plus years ago. My wife has never come home and said, well, what did you do today? With the aspect of it being accusatory. When she asks, what did you do today? She just wants to know what we did today. Pure and simple, you know. When you go in eyes wide open to any situation, you are much better prepared to deal with the situation. So my wife knew from the beginning that I am going to do it differently. And she's okay with that because that's what we decided. That's what we decided was going to work best for us. So when my kids were Dave's age, when we were going around on all of our different adventures with all my other Casey dads, buddies, we didn't, yes, would we go to parks? Yes, absolutely. Would we go to the zoo? Yes, absolutely. But would we go to the Kansas Speedway and watch the time trials? Yes, absolutely. You kids can go watch, NASCAR.
Yeah.
They need to wear earmuffs, absolutely. Would we go to construction sites? Would we go to Civil War battlefields? We just did it different. But the kids still got an education. The kids still got meaningful engagement out of it, so there's no, this, I guess I'm kind of getting away from um, if you're going to be a parent, you're a parent. It goes back to what Dave said earlier. It's not like, and you said it too, both in different ways, shapes or forms. There's not really a handbook to being a parent. There's not really a handbook for being a guy parent or a girl parent. You're just a parent. You got to find what works. And as I said before, I was blessed. My wife and I both went into this lifestyle eyes wide open.
Yeah, I think it's just important to communicate well and set expectations. Just like in any relationship, communication is just so important. And I'll echo what Mick said. Like my wife and I have an understanding, and if there's something that she needs to get done or she wishes was getting done around the house, she'll bring it up. And if it's something that I don't want to do because I'm burnout, I'll say it. But it can be hard to have those kinds of conversations, and even though they seem simple, because you just don't want to rock the boat. And I have a bunch of guy friends that I know their significant others don't, quote unquote, let them do certain things, whether it's like packing the diaper bag or whatever. And they'll say that, oh, they don't let me do that because I don't do it right or whatever. And I wish that they would just let my friends fail at those things, because there's many things when I was just getting used to it that I was failing at because I didn't know how to pack a diaper bag. I forgot the extra onesie, and all right, well, kids riding home in a diaper only. At least I didn't forget the diaper.
Right.
There's and then you start to remember things, and it becomes just part of your routine. And yeah, it's not it's not because I'm a guy that I forgot those things. It's just I was out of practice. Now I have the reps and I can do it. So yeah, I think a lot of it comes down to just communication and just letting us letting dads try.
Absolutely. And you're human. You're human. I don't know how many times that when I was married and raising kids the first time that, I forgot something or she forgot something. And how many times even now that we forget something, there's a miscommunication with me and my wife now. Like something happens and things aren't, maybe we thought we talked about something and I thought I talked to her about something, or vice versa when it came to the kids, and we're just like on different pages. And even though we thought we said something, maybe we didn't say something. But you're human. You're allowed to make mistakes. That's part of the human experience. We make mistakes and we learn and we grow from our mistakes. That's the beautiful thing about life, is that we get to learn and grow from our mistakes. And the beautiful thing about being a dad is we get to help our children learn and grow from their mistakes. Like, it's okay to let your children fall on their face and fail. Heck, it's good for them. It's good for our children to fail. So often do we see so many parents, especially now, like around me, just trying to be the perfect parent, not letting their children fail. Well, I'm not going to let him do anything doesn't want to do. I'm not going to make him do anything he doesn't want to do. Well, maybe you should teach him that he's 6 and he needs to experience multiple different sports so that he can learn what he likes, kind of thing. Like some things, yes, he gets a choice on, but some things, no. And it's also important, like if you say, these are the same people that will say that, oh, I'm never going to make my child do anything they don't want to do, but also shove their own personal agendas down their kid's throat at the same time. It's interesting how it all works, but that's neither here nor there. What's important is that we're all human, and it's okay for failure. There's always room for failure, and failure helps us grow. Failure helps us become better. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. When you fail, you learn, you can change, and you can grow.
Absolutely. And then just to, add one more thing on top of that, it's important to realize that different is okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right, gentlemen, is there any closing thoughts here? I know we're getting close to our time here. Do you guys have any additional thoughts that you want to share, that you want to add before we get into our closing questions here?
Dave, you got anything?
Yeah, I mean, just the one more thing about failure. That's something that is in my mind, because like you said, I want my kids to learn to not be afraid to fail at things. And sometimes I can be a little hard on my kids, but one thing that I'm trying to do to help is to model that and to let them know that, like, admit when I make mistakes and explain it to them. And usually my mistakes are because I'm yelling at them. That's my most recent mistake, and something I'm trying to work through. And I'll always apologize for it and come back and try and make that connection with one of my sons, whoever I happen to yell at, and just say, like, hey, I messed up. We're the same. Like, you mess up sometimes, I mess up sometimes, but I'm always going to keep on trying to do better. And unfortunately, like, at their age, they like to remind me of all the times that I fail. So it's extra difficult, I think, because it's like, oh, remember, mom gets home and like, oh, daddy yelled at me again today. And I'm like, I know we talked about this, But I that's at least my next attempt at trying to teach that. And if that doesn't work, then I'll try something else. And that's also what I love about being a parent, is that when one thing doesn't work, if one sport doesn't work or one technique doesn't work, or it worked with the oldest and it didn't work with the youngest, you can always just try something different, and we're just trying to do our best.
Absolutely. I mean, the last thing I just want to make mention of is I think it is fantastically awesome that the song that you referenced there earlier, the Watching You, is we covered that song also on our perfect songs for Father's Day playlist. And the fact that that's the one that completely, popped into your head and you were making a specific point about, that tells us that, okay, that song hit other people just like it hit us. And that, serves as the reminder of why we're trying to do what we're doing, because we're trying to show guys that you're not alone. So I'm trying to bring everything back to that community aspect again. There's other people that are out there that are going through what you're going through. They're picking up on the little, you know, tidbits of life that you're going through, whether they be good, bad, or ugly. You're not by yourself. So don't think that you are. Search out that area of community wherever you can, whether it be, through some type of a social organization, or through some type of a podcast, or through some type of, just watching, like TED Talk type inspirational, video type things where people, explain that, you're not alone. Find your people, find some community, find somebody out there who you can relate to so that you can do your job as a parent, as a dad, to the best of your ability. Dave and I just happen to think that country music is a hell of a good way to do it.
Absolutely. I love that. All right, well, let's wrap this thing up and put a bow on it. Those are just, I don't even have anything to say to recap that. Those just two just awesome things there um, as a whole to take away right there. So let's wrap this thing up real quick, and then I have a couple closing questions for you guys. So just while we wrap up here, I'm going to play this beat from Podbeat. It's the lo-fi beat, but as I play, I want to talk about all the amazing things that are going on with the Young Dad podcast. There's some great stuff happening right now, and it's all within the link tree of our on all our social media in the description of this episode. If you want to listen to the podcast, find all the links to the podcast. If you want to get some awesome apparel from Forefathers Clothing or Dad Bod Apparel, some links are in there and some discount codes to save you some money. If you want to come along, we all want to look good and save money. If you're looking at keeping up your health and your personal fitness and wellness journey, guess what? There is a certified personal trainer, a doctor, a PT with Men's Health Coach, Dr. Harold, who's back on the podcast. I've been working with myself for several months now, and I couldn't recommend it more. So there's so many great things. You can order my book. You can get so many awesome things in that book tree, and so many great resources, coupons, and everything. So I hope that you'll go and check that out and find all the amazing things and shout out to our amazing partners and those who support the podcast and support me and the work that we do here. Yeah, so that's it. Closing it there. For you guys, I just have one closing question, and it could be something you could reiterate something you've already said tonight, or something that I want you to think. You're going to be talking to, or not talking to, but a young father comes to you, hence Young Dad Podcast. I became a dad when I was 21. I was just a couple months after I turned 22. I just became a dad a few months after I turned 22. So I was barely 22. I don't even have a full frontal cortex developed at this point. All right, guys. So think of a young dad, 20, 20 to 25, super young, just had his first kid, scared out of his freaking mind. He you know him, he knows you, he asks you for some just advice, 1 or 2 tidbits to give him as a young father. Hit us, Dave.
Makes point to me.
You're the youngest. You can
most
relate to the
recent.
younger generation better.
I
Nick,
guess,
stop
yeah.
aging yourself. Come on,
It's
man. It's like the 3rd time.
It's part of my it's part of my thing. It's just it's what
I
I
like
do.
it.
it's mixed brand.
On
Yep.
brand.
Yes,
On brand.
Yeah. Yeah, I think is I guess I'll reiterate something I said near the end of our conversation, that I would encourage that dad to just try all those things, even if it seems like it's something that mom is supposed to do. Just try it, and take the baby by yourself for a day. Take the baby out to the supermarket. Take the baby out to the park to make some friends, and wear the baby. Just get out there, and I think that can really, I think that helped me as a dad, and help my partnership with my wife as we just transitioned into being parents together. That, hey, I'm not going to just leave everything to her to figure out. That I'm going to be active, and I showed that I was going to be active through my actions by taking the baby and just doing all the stuff that she was doing, or that even maybe someone would expect the mom to do, and to not be afraid to just give it a try. Because now I'm this experienced parent, and I'm very confident, but I'd only ever held one other baby in my entire life before my son was born. And I held her, it was my friend's daughter. I held her for like 5 seconds, and I was terrified because I thought I broke her neck, because I didn't know how to like hold the head up. And the next baby I held was my own son. So I really started from scratch, but you just got to try and put yourself out there. I think that can help any dad just start on the right trajectory.
I'm going to follow up on that. Very similar. Get out there, try, like Dave said. But when you get out there and you try, you do what works for you. Do what works for you. Do what works for your family. Kind of talked about it earlier. If you want to take the kid to a construction site and look at the, dump trucks and backhoes instead of going to story hour at the library, I guarantee your kid will have fun. I guarantee your kid will learn something. I guarantee your kid will have a positive experience, because it is with you. So just be engaged, find what works for you, do what works for you and your family, and it will, it will manifest itself. The other thing that I would tell, and I would give this advice to a dad of any age, is apologize to your kids when you screw up. Tell them, I screwed up. I am sorry. Because that puts you back on their level. Think about it. How often do kids just they're like, all you ever do is yell at me, and all you ever do is tell me I did it wrong. Well, when you tell them that you did it wrong itself, you are humanizing yourself at their level. And that's powerful.
Yeah, that's incredible, guys. Thank you guys for this conversation. Thank you guys so much for the advice, the tidbits, and everything that you guys shared with us tonight. And for allowing me to get vulnerable with you guys. I mean, I almost broke down into tears there a little bit. But again, that's just really shows the power of this music, the power of country music, and the storytelling aspect of it, and how relatable it is as fathers. So please, if we haven't already mentioned it, where can people find you guys? If we haven't mentioned it already, what's the name of the podcast? Go ahead and plug yourselves a little bit, and then we'll get out of here.
Country Music Dads. Everything is under Country Music Dads in one way, shape, or form, either at Country Music Dads or ending in a .com or Gmail. And in addition to just the podcast, every song that we talk about on the podcast is on a playlist. So you can search Spotify for the Country Music Dads playlist, and And then all the songs that we talk about on the show are right there as well, so that you can find them.
And everything is the whole summary is countrymusicdad.com. Can't go wrong with checking out the website. And yeah, Jay, just I really enjoyed the conversation today. Thank you guys. I think it was awesome to connect with you because I think that's what we felt, the connections we have with people as dads and the connection that we have with people who are fellow country music fans. All those things come together. Really awesome.
Yeah, thank you so very much for inviting us on, reaching out. We really appreciate it. And, your show is awesome. And the fact that you just put so many different dads out there, that you're building community, thank you.